Hey there, Openforcers, and welcome back to the Gig Academy, where we talk about all things gig economy and independent contractor related. Today we have Rob Slack back joining us and Doug Grawe on for the first time. And Doug has actually just joined the Openforce team as our General Counsel. Doug, would you care to say hello to the audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. I really appreciate it. Really excited to be a part of the Openforce family and helping out as best I can.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug. I'm really excited to have you here. And I know you've got a lot to talk about today, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about these predictions. Rob, the man that really needs no introduction and is actually a repeat guest on the podcast. You care to say hello to the audience again?
Yeah, I'd like to say, thanks for joining us today. And I'm so happy to have Doug on board with Openforce, and he's going to be a tremendous asset for us. And congratulations to you, Nick, on becoming a dad.
Hey, thanks, Rob. I'm pretty stoked on it, and definitely my favorite job title I wear.
Yeah.
So, thank you. So I'm pretty excited about what we're going to talk about today. Our marketing team recently just put out a 5 predictions for 2022 coming up for the logistics and trucking and courier industries, and we're going to talk about those today. Pretty excited about this. Fun note on this is we actually did a poll here on LinkedIn back in October. And so a lot of these predictions are coming from our audience on LinkedIn. So the first one being, and Rob, I'm interested to hear you tackle this one because you and I talk about this a lot behind the scenes, but the first prediction is the driver shortage will get worse. What do you think?
No, it's definitely going to get worse. And in reality, and I've been in this industry since the 70s. So, I mean, there has always been a driver shortage. I remember going in, and the first stop I would make is into the dispatch office. And I would say, how many drivers are we short today? And they would hold up fingers, 3, 5, 8, whatever it was. And they got to a point where they were sick of hearing from me. So they just put a sticky note on the outside of the door. But driver shortage has always been an issue. So, what we have now is we have a capacity crisis where there's only so many drivers to go around. The capacity has just exploded. I don't see the capacity backing down anytime soon. I think the capacity was on a pretty steady ramp up before COVID-19.
Okay.
But after COVID hit, basically everybody figured out, hey, you know what? It's a lot nicer not to have to leave the house and just shop online and have everything delivered to me, and makes my life a lot easier and gives me more time with my family or my hobbies or whatever. So I think it is going to get worse because the capacity is just going to get worse.
So when you say capacity, does that mean that consumer trends are changing and it's going to more like online purchasing? So then that causes the need for more delivery?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Online purchasing, it all started when, the iPhone came out, and it hasn't backed off since. So I can't see the capacity being any more than it's going to continue to rise.
Rob's exactly right when it comes to the word capacity, because yes, there are driver shortage issues. We can discuss whether or not the ATA's 80,000 driver shortage number is accurate or not. I think that's debatable, but there is definitely a driver issues. But Rob's word of capacity is the much bigger problem. Because it's as much about, can you get trucks? Can you get trucks in the right spot? Can you get the right size trucks? Are we talking about under 10,000? We talking about over 10,000, over 26,000? And that's also an issue within warehousing. And is there enough warehousing space? And is there warehousing space where it needs to be? Then you start getting into the ports. There's even air cargo issues. Capacity issues within the US and the global supply chain are real issues, and there are so many different factors playing into that. I do think Rob's exactly right about the consumer trends are one of the biggest forces in that. We, for better or for worse, so whatever you want to say about it, we like to consume things in the United States and around the world, and it takes capacity to get it to you. And those challenges, I think Rob's exactly right, are going to get worse in 2022. And it's an exciting time to be in supply chain. You can argue this is the most transformative time of the supply chain world since I mean, you want to talk about EDI in the 1980s and 1990s. You want to talk about containerization in the 1950s.
Okay.
Those are some of the big movements in transportation and supply chain. And I think right now is another one of those big changing times.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So one thing that I've been hearing and, being, kind of starting a side hustle and trying to be a maker myself here and going back to how we used to be a manufacturing country rather than a consuming country. What's the solution here? I've heard a lot of talk of like, we need to do everything here domestically and start, culminating our own resources so that we can create our own internal supply chain rather than relying on like, China and other countries importing in the raw goods or having things made overseas and then importing the goods here. Is that the solution to the problem, or is that just kind of wishful idealistic thinking?
Yeah, I don't think so, because once it hits the shores here, it's all internal supply chain. So,
Okay.
And right now we can't handle what's being imported. If we just made it all here, maybe we would be closer to its final destination, but the capacity is still going to be there. And,
Okay.
And as far as the capacity issue goes, we do recruiting for clients all the time. And, I can get, if you said, hey, I need guys in personal auto, I can get them all day long. As soon as you start going up, I need cargo vans, gets a little tougher. Sprinters, gets a little tougher. You get up to 26 footers with a lift gate, real tough. You get into tractor trailers, good luck. It's just, and so how do we get these drivers who are willing to do the job? It's not an easy job. So,
Yeah.
How do we get them into the right size vehicle to do the work? And, these guys don't really have the monetary capability of going out and buying a brand new Sprinter, even if they
Right.
could get one,
Right, exactly.
they're just not out there. So, we have to work on ways to get the driver in the right truck so he can do his job better and carry more capacity. It all comes down to efficiency. And, the entire courier expedited delivery industry has to become more efficient. It's the only way you're going to deal with, and it's not going to solve the driver shortage problem, but it's going to make it a lot better.
Got it.
Rob's exactly right. And when you start talking about what are the solutions, you have to be talking about, well, what are the problems? What are the problems you're trying to solve? And the answer is that there is no one answer. It's going to take a lot of different things to address a lot of different problems that are leading us to our supply chain issues today. One exciting thing for Openforce clients, and I think for independent contractors in the community, we see an amazing thing happening right now. There's all this talk about the Great Resignation throughout the United States. All these people quit their jobs and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But what's not happening is the unemployment numbers are not going up.
Right.
So people are quitting jobs but they're not unemployed. So where are they going? Well, we're finally starting to see some data on this. And the IRS has said they're issuing more FEINs for new businesses than they've ever issued in their entire history. People are going into business for themselves because they want the freedom, they want the challenge, they want to do their life the way they want to do it. And Openforce, one of the reasons I wanted to join the team was Openforce facilitates people who want to do that and helps the companies that want to utilize them effectively.
100%. And I pointed at myself because I'm one of those EIN numbers. I started a knife making company last year during the middle of the pandemic, and exactly like you said, my time at Openforce is made me want to go out there and chase down a dream. And it's a side hustle right now, but who knows what it could be in 20 years, kind of thing. And I think that you're absolutely 100% correct. You just described my mindset on things where it's like, what, why not? We got a year of our lives taken away. We all kind of stared our own mortalities in the face for probably, the first real time for a lot of people stopping to think about their own death. And they're like, well, what have I got to lose? Do I want to get busy living or get busy dying? 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
So that kind of, Rob, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. I just want to say that, given that the fact that there's so many of these new businesses being formed, there has never been a time in the history of logistics where there's a better time to start, become a master contractor or start your own courier company. I mean, there's so much work out there to be had. You'll fill trucks up from day one. So we've been out there, we've been actively recruiting current individual ICs to become master contractors if they've got some business sense to them, we're going to help them through that process so that they can bring on, 5 drivers. It's a lot easier for an individual to go out and recruit 5 drivers from his family, his community, his church, whoever it is, than it is for the general public of courier and transportation companies to go out and run ads on LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever, and everybody's chasing the same driver, and it's a seller's market, and he's basically got offers from 10 different courier companies. He works them all till he gets the best price, and then he ghosts everybody else. You spend a lot of money on that guy, whereas if you you get a master contractor and you say to him, I'm going to pay you well, you've got to go get 5 guys who work for you, you're going to run this area, let him manage that.
Definitely. All righty. Well, moving on to prediction number 2. Doug, many people are believing that and thinking that proposed legislation changes will cause disruptions, but won't stop IC driver momentum. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, a couple of different things. First is we always have to be mindful of what the government's doing, whether that's the federal government, the state government, there's always activity. And some of it is activity, but not any real results. Sometimes it is truly new laws and new changes. And it also includes the courts. We always have to be mindful of that because things can change on us. And some of those things, the thing we probably all have to watch the most is California and AB 5 and what's happening at the U.S. Supreme Court in those cases. I personally am a believer that the independent contractor business model is a good one, is a strong one, and will survive. There may be some adaptations that need to happen here and there, and depending on the nature of the business and the state and all that kind of stuff. I think there's always things to be mindful of. But one thing that I admire the heck out of transportation, it is a resilient group of people that work in transportation. That includes the drivers to the CEOs and everybody in between. There's a lot to admire about those folks. We'll figure out a way to give people the freedoms that they want to choose. Sometimes people want to be an employee. That's great. We'll do that, choose that. But we also want to make sure people have the right to choose independence. And as much as the government sometimes tries to remove those choices, I, for one, am a believer that those choices will always be there. That being said, yes, always keep your eye out for stuff. I wouldn't say there's anything at the federal level that is imminent that may pass. Yes, there's always possibilities, but nothing that is imminent. PRO Act has been talked about a lot. The PRO Act likely is not to pass in its current version anytime soon. Again, no one can guarantee anything, but that's realistic that that's not going anywhere. Be mindful, but we're going to be okay.
So is there anything hiding in the Build Back Better bill by chance that would affect, independent contractors in any way, or the model?
Are you asking me to opine on about a 7,000-page bill and whether or not there's anything in there that may or may not be good for businesses?
Specifically, page 3,212. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
There's so much in there. It's like, I wonder if just it's gotten read or what could be hiding in there.
Yes, there are reports that there's some stuff in there that's negative. It's not so much reports of the rules changing. And to me, that's what I probably care about the most. Is I care about is the definition of an employee or the definition of an independent contractor changing. That's what I'm going to care about the most. There are things of potential penalties for treating people incorrectly that nobody likes strong, harsh penalties. So that stuff's bad. So there are things along those lines that are in there or that might survive in there to be mindful of. But there is no talk that I'm aware of a fundamental change in the definition of what it means to be an independent contractor or an employee. That doesn't mean some agency might still come up with some rule. But the current version, that, as far as my understanding, no change in the definition.
That's good news. That's definitely been on my mind at night. Rob, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
I think they're going to have a hard time passing any kind of legislation given the financial aspects of the supply chain and inflation and everything else. I do think, though, that the current administration may rely on the Department of Labor, the Federal Department of Labor, to basically enforce the economic realities test. which basically, puts you in a position where does that driver rely on, you for his, for all his revenue? And, that's kind of the nice thing that we offer to drivers and to the clients is that, by signing up with Openforce, you can work for client A all you want. But if you want additional work from client B, C, and D, we can help you get that work. Now, if a driver decides he only wants to work for client A because that's all the time he wants to actually, give to this occupation, well, how do you force the guy to go to work for somebody else? So at least if he has the option and we can prove that he had the availability to do it if he wanted to do it, he's an independent business. He gets to make that decision. But so I would look at the Department of Labor as probably our biggest problem, but I think it's a solvable problem.
Excellent. So, yes, we're only 2 predictions in, but I'm really happy to hear the positivity around this because when I'm reading all of this, and I tend to have a more cynical outlook on things, and I'm glad to hear your guys' outlook is much more positive. I'm feeling a lot better as we're going through these. So moving on to prediction number 3, Mr. Rob, rate increases will become necessary to survive. Yes or no?
Oh, definitely. And I can't tell you how many friends I have that own courier companies and last mile companies, and you'll talk to them and they go, yeah, I just fired this client and this client and this client. That was unheard of. 20 years ago, you held on to those things like grim death. You didn't want your clients going away for whatever, and they had that leverage on you to keep the rates right where they wanted them. And now, because the capacity is so great, it gives companies the option to say, this is a good client, this is a bad client, this is a good shipper, this is a bad shipper. And they're going through that process right now, basically taking the bad customers off their tables and just dealing with the good customers. But even in doing that, you're going to reach a point where you're competing for drivers in a market where, you're competing against people you've never competed against before, who are paying outrageous amounts of money for mundane clerical jobs, in a warehouse or something. So, you're going to continue to have to pay more to get the job done. And somebody's got to pay for that. I mean, there's no such thing as a free delivery. That's a myth. These drivers got to get paid. So if you've got to pay the drivers more, then you have to go back to your shippers and say, we need more money. And, the pharmaceutical companies were famous for this for years, where they locked down the whole industry. And they said, we're willing to pay X per stop. And if you're not willing to do that for me, I'm going to go to the 10 other guys who are dying for the business. Well, it's hard for them to turn and say, I'm going to the 10 other guys, because there aren't 10 other guys there.
Yeah.
So I do see a lot of rate increases coming down the pipe.
Well, and I'm hearing something from what you're saying too, with some of the bigger accounts and clients and companies, firing some of their clients and accounts and everything because they're not a good account. Well, if I'm an independent contractor listening to this podcast right now, and I've maybe got 1 or 2 subcontractors, it sounds like there's a real opportunity to carve out and go get those accounts that are being fired, to try and build up, and make themselves a bigger company. I mean, is that, am I hearing that or understanding that wrong, or?
That'd be, logistically, that's going to be very difficult for them to go in as a 3-man operation to, a tire distributor or, somebody, they're looking for a regional carrier, somebody who they can basically put all their volume into and only have to yell at one person rather than having to yell at, 50 different master contractors.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree. Rob's right. The rate increases that have been going on, and I think Rob's right, will continue to go on. I think are yes, there's some amount of just supply and demand to it too, but there's just fundamental changes in the cost structure of transportation providers. So I think these rate increases, a bigger chunk of them are here to stay. I think just flat out the cost of transportation is going to increase for shippers. And frankly speaking, there needs to be more money. There needs to be more money for the people who are doing the actual transportation work. There needs to be more people for those turning the wrenches on the vehicles. There needs to be more people or more money for the people in the offices making it all go, because it's a hard job. It takes a lot of attention, a lot of care to do it well. And as an industry, we've been beat down by rates or by shippers on rates for a long, long time. And there's some calibration going on right now. And some of that is good and healthy and needs to stay.
Yeah.
Got it.
One other issue on the rate increases that I think is happening right now is that, the merger and acquisition market out there is so red hot. I mean, every owner I know has 1 or 2 LOIs sitting on his desk. And if you had gone to him 8 months ago and says, hey, I'm going to give you a 6-time, multiple of EBITDA, they would jump on it. Now, the EBITDA numbers, the multiples are going up, and they're telling me that they're making more money than they've ever made before. So they're not in a hurry to sign that LOI, because the farther they can get into it, and if they can raise rates, which will raise their EBITDA, they're going to make even, more on the flip. So, I think you're going to see a lot of rate increases that are basically, bolstering the EBITDA line so that they get a better exit strategy.
Got it. So one thing too that I'm just kind of curious about, obviously these rate increases are necessary. Is it going to be, all of us, end users, we're taking X product off the shelf that's going to see kind of an increase, in goods, and what does that mean for just everyday people?
Everything's going up.
Okay. so
nothing will be spared.
Okay, got it. Well,
yeah, Rob's right. That can't be all absorbed by margin at the retail level.
Right.
Everybody will feel a little bit of that. Costs are going up everywhere. Costs of raw materials, costs of people, costs of transportation, costs of technology. It's all going up.
So, we hear, people talking about, the inflation we're experiencing right now. It's probably, I don't know how related it is to what we're experiencing and what we're talking about right here and now. Do we see this kind of easing at any time in the future? Because I've heard predictions like the inflation could stick around to like 2022, 2023 through 2025. I mean, is the kind of rate increases too kind of linked with inflation that we're experiencing, or is this kind of its own thing? And how long do you think that this will be around, or is this just our new normal?
I'll go first on that, in the sense of, first of all, with the caveat that I'm not an economist, so I can't speak terribly intelligently to how long inflation will stick around. I can tell you that just speaking about rates, I do think rates will remain in the carrier and in the courier's favor.
Okay.
So they'll have more leverage. I would say all of 22 probably. Yeah. It's probably early 23 where that starts to soften. But
okay.
As a mentor of mine would say, there's a reason economists all have 2 hands, because on the one hand and on the other. So, take that with a giant grain of salt. But from what I read, from what I hear talking to business owners, I hear confidence in the rate market for carriers and couriers well into, if not all the way through 2022 and into early 23.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, the government's already poured, X amount of trillions of dollars into the economy, which is going to fuel the inflation for some time to come. So, I think Doug's a lot more optimistic than I would be.
All right. Now I was saying earlier, the positivity feelings, then they're kind of slightly dipping down a little bit, which leads us to prediction number 4. Transportation companies are going to and are investing in technology. Rob, would you like to speak to this one first?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the first issue with driver shortage, I mean, technology has got to play a big role in making everybody more efficient. And that goes from everything from the onboarding process, right through the dispatch process. And I really think that the only way that, we're going to be able to handle this capacity is that in certain markets, there's going to have to be friendly competitor networks formed, where if you've got, 4 or 5 guys in St. Louis and you all know each other and you like each other, and it's not like it was back in the 80s where you hated every competitor you had, and, now you don't think he's such a bad guy and he's not going to steal my business, because if he steals my business, there's so much more business I could get anyway. I'm not that concerned about it. So I think all these companies got to get together and start basically saying, okay, why don't we have a driver do this area for all 5 of us? And the technology is going to tie all that in together. So you're going to create much more dense routes in basically a bullseye pattern away from the center of the city. And that way, you can get more efficiency out of those guys so that those short mileage guys are going to be able to come back for a second run, or the long distance guys are going to be able to go straight out to their first delivery and start that route. So it's going to improve on delivery times, and it's going to improve on efficiency, but technology is going to have to be what ties everything together.
Absolutely.
On the trucking side, where I have a little bit more of my background, I don't have as much in the courier side, but in the trucking side, technology is really becoming a minimum. If you want to play, you have to have some good technology that's going to make things more efficient for your shippers. You have to be figuring out how are you adding value to your shippers. Obviously, your capacity is your biggest thing. Hey, I've got trucks, I've got drivers. That's the most important thing. But you do have to have some technology capabilities to increase the visibility of the freight, to increase communications, to make billing and collections easier, to all that stuff, to find efficiencies.
Definitely. So what I'm hearing you both say, if someone is listening to this and they're not using Openforce, they should be.
Well, yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, I know, Rob, you and I've talked about this a lot, and I think we've talked about it on the podcast as well. One thing that Openforce is doing is our IC Recruit program. And if there's an independent contractor listening to this podcast, we'd love to hear from you and get you kind of into our driver pool to, connect you with, companies that are looking for, people like you that want to do, courier and logistics type stuff. So we'll have that information in the show notes and everything, but that's one thing that we're doing as a tech company that has been really useful to our current accounts and clients. I know, Rob, like that's something you've been really, integral in driving.
Yeah, well, one of the advantages we have is that, we're advertising to the general public like everybody else, but we have a database of about 350,000 drivers. So and these drivers basically have worked for a client at one point or another. And at any given 6-week period, we're settling with maybe 110,000 drivers, roughly 50,000 a week or whatever. So, we would consider those to be active drivers. If they haven't worked for a client, if they haven't had a settlement go through in the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we consider them inactive. When I say inactive, it just means that they're not basically providing services for one of our clients right now. It doesn't mean that they're still not in the delivery business. So
right.
For our clients, who come to us and say, hey, I'm opening a new market. I need 30 guys in cargo vans and sprinters. We have the ability to go into that inactive database and send out an email to those particular drivers who meet that criteria and say, we have a client, he's looking for this. Here's the particulars. If you're interested, click this link and we'll put you in touch with them. So, we can basically serve up on a platter at least qualified drivers who have been through the process, have been background checked before, have been compliance monitored before. They understand the whole process. You're not bringing a guy in who's never done deliveries before and try to teach him how to do deliveries. The Uber guy who wants to now deliver packages. So it's been a great advantage for us, and we do get a lot of traction.
It's awesome, yeah. And I've had one account literally get like 30 drivers from our IC Recruit alone, and like completely fill a location that they needed drivers in. So it's a great program. All right, prediction number 5, and then this is the last one, and then closing thoughts. Doug, the future of the transportation industry is at the mercy of increasing insurance rates. Yes or no?
Insurance rates definitely have an impact. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's happening on a variety of fronts. The most notable, the most headline grabbing are the primary auto liability insurance costs. And what's happening there is it's 2 big trends. One that gets all the headlines is a trend called nuclear verdicts. And those are $10 million plus verdicts against transportation providers. And that's everything from full 80,000 pound trucking companies to plumbing companies that have their vans driving around town, and courier companies and so on. There are all sorts of transport companies that have vehicles out on the road, they're being hit with these types of verdicts. So we're seeing insurance carriers leave the industry over this. The other thing that's happening is that small claims that were $5,000 5 years ago are $25,000 today. The $25,000 claim 5 years ago is $80,000 today. That type of stuff is very painful to the insurance companies. And what that means is that's painful to the underlying transportation providers when their premiums go up or they can't find insurance at all, which happens from time to time. And then that is also expanding into the work comps and the general liabilities and other types of insurance policies as well. Having insurance, having the right amount of insurance to protect your business, whether your business is big or small, is harder and harder to do, and very hard to do it well. So yes, the industry is definitely feeling the impacts of a much tougher insurance market these days.
Got it. Is there any, I mean, kind of like we've been talking with things, you know, and this is all speculation. Is there any relief in the future for this to kind of ease up, or is this just what the normal is, or should we expect to see, you know, this kind of climb and become more and more costly?
Well, I think the good news is that I think there's some amount you can control, and you can control it by improving your safety.
Okay.
And if you have a good safety program, you're doing a good job finding good, solid drivers, you're doing a good job developing your drivers and encouraging and reinforcing a strong safety culture. If you're using technology to prevent accidents, if you're regularly talking to your drivers about safety and reinforcing that message, you're using data to improve your safety. If you're doing those types of things and you are on top of your safety scores, your safety data, your safety narrative, and you're talking with your insurance agents regularly so that they know the good things you're doing, you can stand out from the crowd. A lot of insurance is about comparing to your peers and risk pools and all that kind of stuff. If you can prove that you're different, that you're better, then you don't have to be as much of a victim of the market as your competitor down the street.
Got it. Okay. So again, too, I mean, what I'm hearing is if you're not using Openforce, you should be using Openforce, because we definitely help with a lot of those things. And you know, I mean, it's another proof to, you know, the insurance companies, and also, you know, in any type of misclass case, you know, we're able to handle that and prove, you know, A, independent contractor relationships, and B, the safety portion that you're talking about, and what, you know, all of the criminal background checks and motor vehicle records being housed in our system, being compliant, and everything like what you're describing. So that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, what Openforce does is Openforce provides you tools. Now, what you do with the tools is up to you. So you know, you can be great, and we can be a big part of the reason you're great, because we have great tools to help you. But we can get you there, but you got to push it over the line and do those things. So we've got good partnerships. There are plenty of good safety providers out there. I know we partner with one called Samba Safety. They're a good, solid outfit. I have a lot of good things to say about them. That type of stuff is helpful to companies, and I would encourage them to take a look at us for those types of help.
So too, just for the person listening that doesn't know what Samba Safety does, what do they do, and why did we partner with them?
So Samba Safety does a wide variety of things within the safety world. And forgive me for being a little bit new here, not knowing exactly everything that we're offering. But it is my understanding that Samba Safety, we have the ability to do some monitoring. And I say what I mean is, by utilizing Openforce and our partnership with Samba Safety, you get access to tools that will help you monitor driver performance, you know, speeding and other events. You can do coaching. We've got coaching modules and so forth to free your team up, put that on us to do for you. so that you can worry about the other parts of your business. Those are the types of things that we can do. But Rob, maybe you can steer me a little bit better if I'm off a little bit there.
No, I think you did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, no, you knocked it out of the park.
We're going to bring you into sales pretty soon, Doug.
Yeah. Excellent. Awesome. Well, hey, we're past the point of predictions, but now we're at the portion of the podcast where what's your one takeaway you have for our audience that something that they can apply to their business for next year. Doug, would you like to kick us off, being the first time guest on the podcast?
Yeah, thanks. And I've really struggled to figure out what is the one thing that I take away. I think the one thing that I take away is probably this. Not only are all of our clients competing for freight, but they're also competing for people. And if you want to compete and you want to win when it comes to attracting and retaining people, you have to have good, strong programs. That means you got to have competitive pay, you got to have competitive resources and benefits and so on for people. You have to treat people well. And shameless plug, Openforce can help you with all of those things. We can help make the contracting process easier. We have access to benefits and so forth for independent contractors that really a lot of people can't match. And obviously then we have our pay function and other insurance products out there. We can help you position yourself well in the marketplace for people. And whether you use Openforce or not, I would just encourage anybody, make sure you're doing well to compete for people, not just compete for freight.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Doug. Rob?
Yeah, I think that, the industry faces a big problem, and it's a great problem to have. I mean, when demand is so much greater than supply, what are you going to do to basically try to grab as much of that demand as you possibly can? And it's got to come through efficiencies. And, I think technology efficiencies are the first place you got to go. I talk to so many people, and they have a regional carrier or whatever, and they've got a tech team, and they're trying to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of technology out there right now that you can basically utilize to get you to the finish line faster. You just don't have the time. It takes a lot of time to build out your own technology. So find people who have the technology already in place, and how can you incorporate it into your current operation? Because efficiency is basically the only way you're going to be able to capture as much of the demand as you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And Doug, Rob, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Gig Academy. It's great having you guys on. Hopefully we'll get to do this again too.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Gig Academy. And stay tuned for the next episode. And be sure to check the show notes for any of for the blog posts that we talked about today, these 5 predictions, and how you can get signed up on IC Recruit. Have a great day, everyone, and happy holidays.
All right. Thanks.